Alrighty, so I am going to be demoing a product that I've been working on for the past few weeks. And then I'm going to get straight into walking through the code for it because I want to prove to you guys just how simple, conceptually speaking, building digital product is. And this is going to be a little bit of a departure from the content that I usually post, which is whiteboard content, just me in front of a whiteboard, drawing out concepts related to mostly peripheral concepts having to do with software engineering, like your education and different life paths that you can take and why, you might want to consider getting into building digital products and launching them, all of those sort of things. And I find that content is great and it has resonated with some people. Although I want to kind of put that content into practice, really get into the nitty gritty, into the details, and show you what I've been doing and show you how this is actually possible and totally legit and not just some sort of weird, impossible pipe dream that you see me yap about always, but not actually do in action. So I built this thing. It's called CryptoCart. And basically it is a platform where you can purchase anything you want off of Amazon.com, currently only in the USA, with crypto. And the reason why this is kind of necessary is because so many people that have cryptocurrency, they want to spend it, they want to use it, right? But they're limited in terms of their options for offboarding the crypto into a fiat currency like US dollars or Canadian dollars or whatever you want to use, because they typically have to go through an exchange, they have to link their bank account, they have to upload documents, they have to create an account on the exchange, and they have to go through this procedure. They have to get validated by the exchange before they can withdraw any money off. These are all like anti-money laundering laws, anti-terrorist, blah, blah, blah. But I'm here to provide an alternative to all of that, which is the fact that you don't have to sign up to this at all. You just have to connect your Web3 wallet. And then no KYC, so your privacy is completely respected. All you have to do is pick products that you want, add them to your cart, provide a shipping address with a name, whatever that might be, doesn't matter, and then pay. You can pay with either Ethereum or USDC, doesn't really matter. Those two options are available. And then afterwards, you can basically track your order to make sure that it is coming on time. So I'm going to just walk through this demo real quick. So welcome to CryptoCart. The first thing that we're going to do is go into Amazon and find a product. So I just have this Lamy pen queued up here. So I'm just going to paste that in there. So we can import the product directly into the page. And we're going to get something basic, just images, quick description, price, and a button to add this to the cart. And this is just sort of a basic flow that I've implemented because I don't want to spend too much time making it all pretty and adding all this data, especially since it hasn't been launched yet, right? And this is advice that I employ all the time, which is just get something working, even if it doesn't look amazing. Use some basic component library just so you can get something out there and show proof of concepts like this. So once I have the item, I can look through the images. I can then add the item to my cart, standard cart functionality here. And then all of a sudden shipping information appears. So I can, enter in, like let's say I want to order to Chicago and my address is 111 XYZ Ave or whatever. First name Bill, last name Harris, postal code 12345, state code IL for Illinois. I mean, all of these values are obviously bullshit, but I think that doesn't matter for the purposes of this video. So if I go submit, I'm going to get back some information here. So we've got ourselves a subtotal, shipping costs, taxes, and the fee that CryptoCart would take, which is 3%. It's going to give you a grand total and then some payment buttons. Now the reason why these are grayed out is because you have to connect your wallet. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and connect our wallet. Going to get that done here, and then we're going to connect. Okay, so I have a wallet that's connected here, and then I can go ahead and just pay with ETH. So then that's going to come up, it's going to show me a MetaMask transaction with the ETH. Now, I don't have enough ETH in this wallet, so I'm not going to go through the whole flow of confirming it. But this is how the product works. It's kind of interesting because then, after you confirm, then it's going to give you a confirmation message with an order ID, and then you can go and paste that order ID inside of here to actually track the order. So that's basically it. I mean, this whole thing took me about 2.5 weeks to build. And I definitely used the help of artificial intelligence to build this, like ChatGPT, code generation. I use Cursor as my IDE. So I am going to go through the code and just show you guys what's up and give you guys some insight as to why I've employed certain design decisions for, I mean, like, honestly, the design decisions haven't been incredibly sophisticated anyway, because it's still such an alpha product, right? Like, I would never encourage somebody to spend too much time on architecture or design or making it look pretty or anything. It could be spaghetti code, but I mean, for me, I like having a little bit more than just spaghetti code, especially in the beginning, because just for my own organizational sake, it's easier for me to keep track of stuff. So that kind of just boils down to a stylistic standpoint. So what I'm going to do is just hop into the code here. All right, now this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're working with. It is a Nuxt code base, so we're using Nuxt.js, which is a framework that wraps around the popular component library Vue.js. And I find that Vue.js is a lot more interesting than React because it is so much more clean. In React, you have all these hooks and you just end up in this hell with, tons and tons of hooks, especially as you scale. And I think that Vue.js is just a lot more cleaner. Like, I always know where I am and what I'm doing within the code. So it just makes it so much more desirable and cleaner to the eye and more organizational. That's just my opinion. I mean, React fanboys, you can feel free to call me out on that if you disagree. But so I'm using Vue.js for the project. And essentially what I've decided to do, I have this components directory. I have, all these other directories. I'll just start out by going and walking through the main entry point. So the main entry point, this is where it all starts in the app.vue. There's nothing special going on here. We're using the V app from Nuxt, and then we're just adding in a Nuxt page. So it's a single page application. There aren't any other pages. It's just one page, which is, very basic, no routing, super simple. So then basically what we're doing here is we are rendering this main page, right? This main index page. And then this contains all the components that we see over here. So we have our header, which is this bar up here. We have our welcome card, which is this, the welcome information. We have the track component, which is here. We have the add product, display product, shipping info, and payment, which are all of these components that you see here. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So if I go into my header, and then this is the area where I have the title here, but the main functionality involved is the crypto wallet connection and also the cart button as well. So we have this wallet connect button here component, and if I kind of get into this, the connect wallet button, it's a very simple button that just allows you to connect and disconnect your Web3 wallet from the app. We're using this library called WAGMI, which is really useful, I find, for handling all these types of connections. And it's so much better than trying to implement this manually because they've done everything for you. They just give you hooks and then you use them. It's super straightforward. So basically, yeah, so we're grabbing the chain ID, we have this use connect here, which is useful for connecting your wallet. And then we can actually get the address of the connected wallet from the user using this hook here. And then if we want to disconnect, so we're using all of these hooks within our template here. So the whole logic within this is that if you're not connected, so if there's no address, which means that you're not connected, then when you click, it's going to connect. And if you are otherwise, then it's going to be a red button and it's going to prompt you to disconnect. So it serves a dual purpose. It serves two purposes. You can either connect or disconnect. So that's pretty simple. And what's beautiful about this too is that this address will maintain inside of the Wagmi state across the entire app. So I can copy this hook right here and put it anywhere else in the app, and it will display the same address, even if it's, so it's like really awesome state management across the whole app. You can access this anywhere. So this is the little connect component that we have. And then aside from that, we have our cart button, which is a little bit more complex because we are using some logic in here. We're connected to our main store. Now, the main store is using something called Pinia. It is this sort of lightweight global state management for Vue. It's kind of like Redux. If you're familiar with React, it's kind of like Redux, but it's super lightweight. So I'm going to show you the config. Oh, so under stores main, yeah. So this is what my store configuration looks like for the entire app. It's super lightweight. There isn't that much going on. We have, our main state, which is we're storing cart IDs. We have basically a cart, which is an array of all of the items, which are expressed as objects, all the items that we are adding to our cart. And then we have the shipping information stored in global state as well. And then we have the current product import. So this is the product that we actually import from Amazon. And then we have our getters, which is straightforward. We have actions, which specifically edit various parts of the state as we need. I won't go through all these right now, but as we walk through the code base, I'm going to basically explain these one by one as we encounter them. So yeah, so we have the Pinia store, super straightforward. So we're grabbing that with the hook use main store. And by the way, you'll notice that there's no imports. Nuxt has auto imports. It's this crazy feature. I mean, that's one thing about front-end development that blows my mind is that magic has gotten so much more common. So if you're just looking at this from outside it, you're gonna wonder why the hell that this actually works, or because there's nothing being imported. So, and I mean, there's errors that are being thrown. I can fix that in the editor. I'm not gonna do that right now, but the editor is expecting there to be an import statement, but Nuxt knows that it's there because of the auto import feature that it uses. And that whole auto import thing can be configured, which is also kind of cool. But just understand that it's magic, effectively. And with great magic comes great responsibility and an understanding that stuff might not always make sense. Right? There's always trade-offs. I always get into these modes of thinking where I end up really liking the magic, but then at the same time, I acknowledge that it's a trade-off. Anyway, yeah, so that's one thing to consider. So what we're doing is we are getting our cart, the state of our cart. So like remember back here, when we import a product, we can add it to the cart, and then this button right here, I mean, I don't know if this is exactly the best design decision, but this button right here contains the state of the entire cart. And I added this computed wrapper because Vue has this thing called, it's in the composition API. Computed, what it does is it makes sure that this cart value is reactive. So if the state changes at any time, if we add more items to the cart button is going to know about it and it's going to update accordingly without us having to do anything. If we were to just use main store.getCart without the computed, then that would cause us problems, because if we had an update, we wouldn't know how to respond to that, or we would just not respond to that at all, and it would all of a sudden display outdated information. So what we have to do in this case is add the computed in there. So we're showing the cart. We have like a ref. A ref is just a reactive value that we can customize. Reactive meaning that if it changes, the component's going to re-render, similar to how React works every time that there's a state change. Same concept, different modality. Show cart is one of those. So the, what are we doing here? Show cart equals false. Yeah, so obviously when we click the button, this modal here is going to show. That's what that is for. When we click it, if we're clicking it, it's going to toggle the cart, right? So we have this toggle cart handler, and that's going to just flip the value of our ref here. And then show cart, right? Show cart here. So this the whole dialog, this v dialog. This is coming from a library called Viewtify, which is pretty awesome. I'll just like search it real quick. Viewtify. It's pretty awesome. Sort of a basic component library here. So much better than using nothing. But I mean, there's obviously better ways of making your app look cool. But this is a good start. It's good to get yourself going with that, and then just kind of see where you want to go afterward. But yeah, so I'm using Viewtify. VDialog is just Viewtify slang for modal, like this, with a grayed out background. And so we have this. We have a card, which is just like another sort of UI layout component. And then we have our title. We have our list of all of the items in the cart. And this whole component here, this whole list, is just grabbing items, right? Like we're doing our for loop here, right? So we have v-for item in cart. That means we are iterating through every single item inside of the cart that we got from our store. And then we're displaying those items as rows. So each row represents one item. And now we have all of the data in our store, because if we go back here to, I think it's add product, this is our little widget to add a product. So when we add a product, what's happening is we're using something called Rye. We're using this third-party service called Rye, which is sort of an e-commerce API. And we're using them as a product database right now. So we don't actually have our own database yet. We will. I think that's probably a good idea at some point in the future. So what happens is, when we get the result back from adding a product with Rye, we are querying the Rye API again to get more information about that product. And then we're setting the current product import to the result that we get back. And remember, that's congruent with our store. This current product import, it's going to display information about the current product that we are importing, obviously. So then what ends up happening is we are taking, just want to make sure I'm getting this right here. We're setting the current product to import, set current product import, which does this. Yeah, and then we have to add it to the cart. Display, sorry, that's in display product. I messed that up. So yeah, so when we add the product, it's good that I went over this, because when we add the product, we're essentially setting the current product import inside of our store, and then under display product, that's where we have the option to add the item to the cart. So this is the display product component with the carousel and the images, and we're displaying all of this information from the store, from get current product import as declared inside of add product. So we're getting this directly from the store, and again, that's computed. So if you decide to change it, it's going to be reactive and actually change the data that you see under display. And then we have this button here to add your item to the cart, which we've demonstrated before. And that add to cart triggers this function right here, which triggers our store to add the product to our cart. And if we look at our store, this add to cart, all it's doing is calling, so it calls increase quantity. And what that does is it just adds the product to the cart array in our store. And then once we have an updated cart array, then in the cart button in our header, to kind of come full circle and to come back, we are essentially grabbing that from the store. So main store.getCart, we get that cart, and then we're iterating through all of the items in the cart. So it doesn't matter, you can add as many items in the cart as you want. And for each item, we have metadata, we have images, we have title, we have price, all of those things. And as you can see here, this is all of the things that we're displaying. Quantity. So if we want to update the quantity, for example, these are the buttons to do that. We have the plus and minus, and we're directly calling decrease quantity and increase quantity on our main store. So we have increase quantity, decrease quantity, and these are just mutating the cart array. So they're finding the product that already exists in the cart array, and they are decreasing or increasing the quantity inside of that. So we have our header with our button. We're messing with the quantities. There's all this cool stuff going on here. Yeah, so that's great. That's how the cart button works. Pretty cool. When you close, it'll toggle the show cart ref that we declared so that we can actually close it. And then, yeah, so we have all this shipping information too, right? So if I go to this shipping info component, here's the text, add shipping information, and it's a form. We're just using a form, and we're using the form class from Vuetify. They have their own way that they do forms. So it's a V form, and then this is how we're styling it here, and we're structuring it. We have our city, address 1, address 2, first name, all of these fields. The V model points to the actual refs that we are declaring down here in our setup script, which means that every time that V model changes, it's going to change in the text, in the input bar, so to speak. So we have a submit button as well, which will add the shipping info into the main store. We'll go over that in a second. But yeah, so we have all of these refs here, and we're setting them as empty strings for now. But as you can see, when we add letters into these input boxes, these refs are actually changing in real time, and then the text fields are modeled off of them. The data in the text fields are modeled off of these refs, so that's why the text actually change inside the text box. So knowing that, once we have all of our info, we add the shipping info. And this is the function to do that. So we start out by adding the shipping info in our main store. So remember, we have our main store here, and we have shipping info as one of our main state items. And we have this add shipping info action, which updates that shipping info object with shipping info that we pass into it. And here's all the data. We have city, address, first name, last name, postal code. Here I have province code because I've been experimenting in Canada because I live in Canada, but this actually only works for Amazon US currently due to the software that I'm using. So this would actually be state code, but I'm calling it province code. Country code US, and then what we're essentially doing here, yeah, like this is some old code that we really don't need, but this is all we're doing. We're just adding the shipping info to our state store. So we have that in here. And then the next step is, of course, when we get to this payment bar. And this is where most of the nuts and bolts are occurring. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to dive right into that. So header, index, display product. I'm going to just dive directly into that. We have our payment component here. And we have our two individual pay components. So starting out from the top, we have our payment component. And as you can see, pretty straightforward, we have our values. So our subtotal, our shipping, our taxes, the fee, the total. And all of these values are coming from refs and calculations. So we start out with a bunch of refs, and then from there we're actually doing some calculations to make sure that they display properly. So we start out by getting our shipping info. We need both our shipping info and our cart. We have some error handling here if needed. And then immediately our purpose is to calculate the subtotal. So we're doing that by reducing all of the values inside of the cart array. And then we're doing a little bit of like fancy math here or whatever and replace with the regex. But all it's doing is taking the value inside of each cart item, the price, and adding them together, but multiplied by each product's quantity. So if I have one product, it's $1, and I have 5 of them, subtotal is going to be $5. So it does this for every single item in the cart, this block of code right here. And then if it's over $35, shipping is free. That's just a condition that I put because that's how the backend works, and that's how Amazon works. Usually, most of the time. There could be some technicalities there, but for the sake of simplicity, I have left it as such. Okay. So the next thing is we get the tax rate. So I'm using this API called API Ninja, and they essentially just give you a state tax rate. You enter in the postal code, city, province code, and it'll give you a tax rate. So then once we have our tax rate, we're making sure that our values are in floats because we can't really do much math with strings in JavaScript, unfortunately. And then we're taking our tax rate, we're taking our subtotal value, we're taking our shipping value, shipping value, which is, so shipping is $5.99 by default in the continental United States for pretty much every product. Amazon Prime is a good question and a good concern. I haven't really addressed that yet because the backend that I'm using doesn't allow it, but I'm sure that there's a workaround. But for now, standard shipping is $5.99 or it's free above $35. So we have total tax rate, subtotal value, shipping value, and then our total taxes is basically the total rate times our subtotal and our shipping. And yes, taxes applied on shipping in most US states. So I've just defaulted to that. And then we have our fee, of course, which is 3% times our subtotal value. That comes off the subtotal. We're not going to charge a fee off of shipping, obviously. So taxes, we're doing dot value here because it's a ref. You have to edit the dot value field on refs in order for it to change the value. Here we're calculating, so taxes dot value. We're just cleaning it up with a decimal and then converting it to a string. And then our fee. And then finally the total, which is like subtotal plus shipping plus taxes plus our fee. And then that total gets displayed over here. So there's like a little bit of math going on, nothing incredibly fancy, an API call to get our taxes, our tax rate, and then we're just stringing everything together and showing it in the component at this point. So then, we have this little condition here, like orders over $300 not supported, just because it would be a hassle in the beginning stages. And then what we have here is a watcher for an error message. So this is the type of error handling that we're doing, which, by the way, if it is one of your first products and you are trying to get started and just get something out there as fast as you possibly can, you probably shouldn't do too much error handling. I mean, you might want to do a little bit just because you don't want to release something that doesn't have any guardrails, right? Because if something goes wrong and your user doesn't encounter any guardrails or any information to tell them what to do, they're going to get very pissed off. And you don't want that. Otherwise, nobody's going to return your product. So I should scratch what I said. Like, don't completely ignore it, but don't go overboard with it either. So this was my attempt at making something very simple. And so the error message, and I'll just kind of go over the way that I'm doing the payment errors. So I'm watching for the error message value. What this means, this is a hook provided by Vue in the composition API. All it means, if the error message value itself changes, then this function will execute. That's it. And the only way that the error message value can change is inside of these payment components. So there's a different component for ETH and token. If you want to pay with ETH, and in this case token, which is USDC. So if you want to pay with ETH, you want to pay with USDC, these are the components to do that. And there are different components for reasons I will get into very shortly. Yeah, so essentially, if there is an error message, okay, if there is an error message in any of these components, right, like if there is, I have another watcher connected to the error inside of the useSend transaction hook. So that means if there's any errors with the transaction itself, that error gets sent to the watcher triggers the new function, and then if the value actually changed, so if there was a new error, then we're emitting a component event called update error message with the new message. And then that event, what happens is it gets propagated to the parent component. As you can see here. So this @update error message is an event handler. So whenever there's an error in either ETH or token, it's going to propagate upward and then call update error message inside of the payment component, which is going to set the error message. And the reason why we want to do that in the parent component is so that we can display the message on the page very nicely. So we have all of our error state within the payment component. And if there's an error within any of our specific pay components, it gets propagated upward. And yeah, it just kind of leads to a more clean error state management system. And I mean, it's probably by no means the best way of doing it. Again, this is like very early stages of a product that I'm just slapping together and putting together some sort of error management that roughly makes sense. And that's, that's the best that you can really hope for when you're trying to build something relatively quick so you can get it out to a market and have people start using it. So we have that little error state going on. And then the last item is actually creating the order. So I've commented this out because just for testing purposes, but essentially we're using this API called Zinc. Zinc is the magic behind this entire thing. So Zinc is an API. You can send information to Zinc and they will place orders on Amazon on your behalf. They have something called a managed account. So you fund the managed account with US dollars or like any currency, I guess. But in this case, it would only be US dollars. Fund the account with US dollars. And then you can just fire off orders. And then that balance will slowly decrease and be used to actually fund the orders. So that's what's so cool about it. And then they handle all the ordering on their side. So I don't even have to worry about creating my own Amazon account and doing any of that ordering at all. So creating the order, so we initiate the fetch, and then we have our body with the shipping info, the products, which is the value of our cart. We're passing in some metadata, which is the address of the user, so that we can map user wallet addresses back to orders. That's currently the only method that we have to actually map user addresses to orders until we get our own database. So for now, in our Zinc dashboard, we'll see that those are actually mapped and we can get that information fairly easily. So what we'll do, dupe key, yeah, we have a dupe, item potency or dupe key, which is essentially just a random key that you send so that the request doesn't execute twice by accident. If it executes twice and it has the same dupe key, the second one will be discarded and it will ignore it completely. It's recommended for APIs that have money involved and spending money involved. So that's basically what we're dealing with here. That is how the payment component works. When you actually go and pay an ETH, for example, what ends up happening is, so we have a template that's just for the button, right? This pay with ETH button that we see down here. How we do this is we're using WAGMI. We have hooks for use account, use send transaction. And the main thing that we want to do is look at this pay function. So when we hit that button, this pay function executes. The first thing that we do is we fetch the ETH to US dollar exchange rate, because otherwise how else are we going to know how much ETH to charge the person if we don't know the exchange rate? So we get the rate. We're using Etherscan here. Rate response response.result.ETHUSD. Once we get that, we are parsing it. We're making the division and we're figuring out exactly how much ETH that we need to charge the individual. And then we have a destination address. We have a value. And we're calling send transaction. So send transaction is directly coming from WAGMI. And then once we call send transaction, that's what triggers the Web3 wallet, in this case MetaMask, to open up. And then we can confirm the transaction and see everything work in real time. So we have a couple watchers. We've already went over the error watcher. We have an isConfirmed handler from WAGMI, from the use wait for transaction receipt. Basically how this works is that once the transaction gets confirmed, this hook fires off, basically. isConfirmed changes to true, the watcher fires, and then we call create order, which exists inside of the payment component right here. And that is the essence of the product. That's how it works. It's pretty straightforward. We also have the token part, which is a little bit different, but mostly the same. We're using, instead of use send transaction, we're using use write contract, because with use write contracts, we're calling an ERC20 token contract. We're not just sending ETH. There's like a little bit of a nuanced difference there. So what we end up doing is the pay is a contract write, and this is the, the address of the smart contract. We have the ERC20 ABI in here, so that we know which functions we can call. We're calling transfer. So calling transfer on the USDC token contract allows us to transfer whatever amount. So this is the total, and the total is just 1-to-1 because USDC and US dollars are 1-to-1. And then those are the arguments. We pass them in, and that's what allows us to send USDC instead of ETH. So we have our watchers watching for errors, watching for it's confirmed. Once it's confirmed, we create the order inside of the parent component, which is payment. Exactly like we saw in the ETH component, it's basically the same thing with a slight nuance, and that's why I decided to break them out into different components, so that they would kind of have their own watchers for confirmations and errors, just to make it a little bit more clean. And that's kind of basically how the product works. This took me, 2.5 weeks of working on it. And that wasn't even full time, because I have a full-time job that I'm also working. So this is all just to show you guys what's possible in a very kind of compact amount of time. Even if you have no experience, it's going to take you a lot longer than that. But so much of this information is just widely available, and a lot of this code was written by AI, cleaned up by me, sort of vetted and audited by me to make sure that it actually works. But yeah, like artificial intelligence, I'm using the cursor.ai chat. Composer is a newer feature. I haven't really used that yet. But every time I need help with something, it's just right here. It's directly in the AI. It's directly in the sidebar, and I can just ask it any question that I want. Right now it's using Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Sometimes I use 4.0. You can import your own custom models too. There's a way to do that. I just haven't really gotten around to it. Probably will start doing something like that soon enough. But yeah, that is the essence of the product. Building digital products is hard and it's easy at the same time. The whole thing is just a paradox. What makes it hard is if you don't know anything right from the beginning, because there's going to be a bit of a steep learning curve. But the good news is you can always learn on the fly. And that's a huge proponent of what I teach, is like you can always learn something new on the fly. You are never going to run out of options when it comes to learning stuff on the fly. Now, if you have a job, you have to maintain a certain standard, so it's a little bit more pressure. It's you have like more pressure to perform at a higher level. If you don't have a job though, and you're just building something, you have the free time to go ahead and build something, then there doesn't have to be any sort of strict quality control, especially in the beginning. And you don't necessarily want there to be, because you want to focus the majority of your time, attention, and energy on just making it solid, making it presentable, and presentable enough, right? So that people can see what's going on, but nothing too flashy or crazy, especially in the beginning. And something that works and has, minimal security involved, right? So that's your checklist. If you want to launch a digital product, your base checklist is functions, minimal security audit, right? Like make sure you're not exposing any environment variables or keys or anything sensitive. And then, like minimal, so keys, minimal security, make it look decent. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. And then, that's basically it. Like I'm trying to even overcomplicate it myself, and it's just silly because there's nothing to overcomplicate. You want it not to break. You want it to not have bugs. You want there to be basic error handling so that your users actually can go through a flow with guardrails. That's the main thing. As a user, can I get from point A to point B to point Z, finish the objective, plan for like some edge cases, like what if I click over here or do something I'm not supposed to, guardrails, error handling, so that the user doesn't go off path or go off course. You want them to have a seamless experience. They land on the site, they know what to do, it's obvious, and they do it. And then they reap the rewards. The value is very clear. And that's it. So this has been CryptoCart. And yeah, like anyone can build something like this if they have the determination and if they really want to. I mean, it's the type of thing where you have to really love it. Otherwise, you're not going to get very far with it. And yeah, like one of my plans is to start using AI agents and building out some of those. So that's going to be really fun. I'm going to, like this was just a code review of something that I've already been working on. But what I'm going to do is in the future, in the very near future, start live coding and live building products. And then, like instead of just doing a walkthrough of something I've already done, I'll start live building, and that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the stream, and we're going to cut it off at that.